Do you want to climb as a strategist in Marvel Rivals? My name is Booney, I'm a Celestial Strategist main, and today I want to share the top 5 mistakes I see new strategist players make over and over again that's stopping them from climbing out of each of the first 5 ranks in the game. If you can learn how to catch these mistakes in your own gameplay and how to correct them, I'm sure that you'll be able to stomp more of your games. This episode is part 1 of a 6-part strategist masterclass for season 1 of Marvel Rivals. In this episode, we introduce all 5 of the main mistakes players make, and in future episodes, we'll deep dive into each one. Starting off in Bronze, the main mistake I see players make in this elo is not knowing your job as a strategist. A strategist's role is to assist and enhance the abilities of you or your teammates through several means. Crowd control like Luna Snow's Snowball, buffs like Mantis' damage boost, utility like Rocket Raccoon's res beacon, and of course, healing. Even though healing is a core function of your role as a strategist, it's important to note that the role is not called healer. That is because although healing is a large portion of this role's job, it is definitely not the only one you need to be thinking of. Take Adam Warlock for example. His healing has 2 charges on a 6-second cooldown each. That means that it's impossible to be spamming heals all game. His only other support ability is his Soul Bond, which has a 30-second cooldown. If putting out a high amount of healing constantly was all a strategist was supposed to do, Adam Warlock would be borderline unplayable. But he can be an incredible pick if you know how to manage his cooldowns wisely and help put in damage when you can. If you spend all your time healing as a strategist, you'll probably not only find the role to be very boring, but you'll also probably be accused of being a heal bot. Just remember that in Marvel Rivals, and any other game for that matter, HP is a resource which can be spent up to 100% of its total. You do not need to spend all of the game on full HP, you just need to be able to survive the damage that you are taking currently. This means that if your team has a decent amount of HP and isn't currently at risk of dying, you can spend some time putting in some damage of your own or look to gain an advantage using your other abilities. For some examples, Adam Warlock can protect the team with his Soul Bond, Invisible Woman has access to a push or pull to force the enemy into a bad position, and Cloak and Dagger has the Dark Force dimension, which allows them to save their team from all sorts of danger. None of these abilities heal, yet all of them support the team and help them win the game. By understanding this about the strategist role, you can beat all the in-select DPS players in Bronze who are forced to play strategist for the first time, but heading into Silver, you'll want to address another huge mistake: not knowing how to form strong team comps. Certain strategists just really don't work well together, and by picking the right or wrong heroes, you can set yourself up for success or failure before the match even starts. But how do you recognize what a good combo is and what a bad combo is? A really good way to get started is by understanding the difference between the 2 major classifications of support heroes in hero shooters like Marvel Rivals: main healers and off healers. Main healers are the strategists that are able to put out a consistent amount of healing very quickly, able to keep the team alive in most scenarios. Usually, this comes at the cost of utility. Off healers typically heal slower or less consistently, but in return are given much more powerful utility. Now, I know that I just said strategists are not just healers, but for the purposes of these classifications, we do need to consider the healing output of each strategist. Let's go through each of the strategists currently in the game and see what I would classify each of them as. Adam Warlock, off healer. As I mentioned previously, he only gets 2 charges of a heal with a 6-second cooldown for each charge. While Adam is able to provide some of the best burst healing in the game, its lack of consistency means there's definitely windows of opportunity where Adam can't heal at all. Cloak and Dagger, main healer. Dagger's healing has generous auto aim and is able to bounce to several teammates at once. Her Veil enhances that healing, and her bubble provides great burst healing. Cloak might not have access to any healing, but you're able to swap between Cloak and Dagger so easily that there shouldn't really be many moments that you feel like you're missing out on healing because you're on Cloak instead of Dagger. Invisible Woman, main healer. Invisible Woman is the newest addition to the support roster, and I'm still debating exactly what I would call her. While her heals are not the fastest and kind of short range, they're able to pierce through the team and are not on a resource. Her shield is also able to provide a decent amount of healing, but can be broken fairly easily if it's focused down. Even still, I feel like Invisible Woman is able to hold down the fort fairly effectively, so I'm going to stick to calling her a main healer. Jeff the Land Shark, main healer. Jeff's water beam pierces targets and has a surprisingly large range. His bubbles grant healing and a healing boost, which allow him to heal his targets very quickly. He's very slippery and hard to take down if played right, which allows him to consistently provide a large amount of healing to the team. Loki, hybrid. Loki is an interesting case. If he has both clones up in good spots that are actually healing his targets, he definitely has enough healing output to hang with the rest of the main healers, especially when you consider the insane burst from his regeneration domain. But the fact that the cooldown on that ability is so high and that his healing is so dependent on if you have clones up, I hesitate to fully classify him as a main healer. For now, I will place him in a weird hybrid in-between zone. Luna Snow, main healer. Aside from her Snowball, Luna's entire kit revolves around healing her team. She is able to heal her entire team at once if they position right with her shift, and her idle aura allows her to keep divers, flyers, or any other important target alive without even needing to look at them. Mantis, off healer. Mantis can only have a maximum of 4 life orbs at any given moment, and when you're trying to heal and damage buff several targets at once, it can feel like you never have enough. The life orbs do provide a small amount of burst healing, but it is almost never a good idea to use 2 or 3 orbs all on one person at once. Rocket Raccoon, off healer. While Rocket Raccoon has very consistent access to healing that almost always gets some sort of value, it is very slow, even after the Season 1 buff. Rocket is very effective at providing a steady stream of healing that repairs small amounts of chip damage, but if you're getting bursted down with a lot of damage all at once, Rocket's not going to be able to save you. Now that we know what each type of healer each strategist is, what can we do with that information? Well, it can inform us on if our team comp works and what we need to change if it doesn't. In general, you want to avoid having 2 off healers at one time. You simply will not be able to provide enough healing to keep the team up if you take a high amount of damage at once. Yes, I know that Adam and Mantis have a pretty good team up, especially if you have a Starlord on the team, but I would highly recommend still having a third strategist that picks a main healer to ensure that the team stays healed when Adam and Mantis inevitably use up their cooldowns. The main problem with running 2 main healers is that your team might lack the utility necessary to win teamfights. Sure, you might be healing a ton, but if one main healer could provide enough by themselves, 2 can just be overkill. I wouldn't say to hard avoid running 2 main healers, especially if you're solo queuing and don't know if you can trust your other strategist, but know that it might feel like you're not able to win teamfights despite the fact that you're both healing so much. For example, switching onto an off healer like Mantis will allow you to damage boost your team, which could provide just enough additional damage to get you through the teamfight. Usually, one main healer and one off healer is a great combo as you can get the best of both worlds in terms of utility and healing. However, Season 1 is being dominated by the triple support meta, so if you're up against triple supports, I would say you need to at the very least play 2 main healers and if possible counter with 3 of your own. I'll talk more about the strengths and weaknesses of the triple support meta and how to beat it without necessarily needing to play 3 supports in an upcoming video, so stay tuned for that. Once you learn how to form good support combos, you should focus on correcting the biggest mistake I see gold strategists making: poor cooldown management. Strategists have access to some of the most powerful abilities in the game. These are abilities that can change the course of the round if used right, but at the same time feel completely useless if used wrong. For example, Loki's regeneration domain is probably what I would consider to be the most powerful non-ultimate ability in the game. When used optimally, it can heal your entire team to full HP in a matter of seconds while simultaneously saving them from instant kill ultimates. But if you were to randomly just spam this ability, it would probably feel like a mediocre short-range heal on a ridiculously long cooldown. Knowing what the true value of each ability in your kit is critical to mastering your character and is something that I hope to discuss in future character-specific guides. For any given ability, you should roughly know what its main use is given the team you're up against, and that should inform you how you're going to use that ability this game. Let me illustrate this point with another example. Take Luna Snow's snowball ability, Absolute Zero. It can stun any character it hits for half a second, and if they're not hit while frozen, that stun takes a whopping 2.7 seconds to wear off. If you're up against Dive, you can bet your bottom dollar that good players will be looking to see if you ever waste that ability, and if you do, they'll be on you incredibly quickly. They can genuinely smell the weakness in your veins that you now have from wasting your main defensive tool. Hold on to your snowball in case you ever needed to fend off a dive, and if you never end up using it, well, hopefully that just means you were never dove all game. Of course, if you aren't against heavy dive, you're much more free to check out your abilities as you see fit, as there simply isn't anyone on the other team looking to take advantage of that. A more broad example is using your cooldowns to counter Doctor Strange's ult. Most Doctor Strange players want to hit a fat stun that hits the entire enemy team. Fortunately for you as a strategist player, this is a fairly obvious move that you can learn to recognize. A simple freeze, sleep, push, or even a big heal from a cloak and dagger bubble or Loki totem can make the ult feel useless. But if you waste that ability and the Doctor Strange sees it, well, now he has all the opportunity in the world to jump onto your team and ruin your day. Hopefully this all goes to illustrate the importance of good cooldown management and gets you thinking about whether or not each specific use of ability was truly as effective as it could have been. If you have questions about a specific ability and when to use it, please ask me about them in the comments. I would love to give you my thoughts on when I think each ability should be used. Alternatively, and shameless plug incoming, I'm live on Twitch and YouTube every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Pacific time, so you could always pop into chat and ask me the question there, or I can respond to you live. Getting into Platinum, most players know how to form good comps and how to best play their characters. Now, the biggest mistake you could be making as a strategist is dying too much due to poor positioning. One of the most fundamental things that you need to understand while playing strategist is that by playing this role, you become one of, if not the most important target to pick off during a team fight. This means that you absolutely cannot, and I mean cannot, be dying unless the enemy team had to contribute a significant amount of resources on their part to secure your death. Are they trading 1 or 2 of their own teammates to get you? Fine, I guess that's worth. Are they dumping 1 or 2 ultimate abilities just to get you? Okay, that's fine. But don't run face first in danger spots and die for literally no good reason. Instead, improve your positioning. In a future episode, I'll be making a full positioning guide where we can really dive deep into this subject, but for now, here's a basic overview of what it means to have good positioning. Your main goal with good positioning is to maximize the amount of impact you have on the team through your healing or utility while minimizing the amount of risk you're taking on from the enemy team. Whether that's from divers like Spider-Man, Black Panther, or Psylocke, or from long-range pokers like Hela, Namor, or Squirrel Girl, you need to have a sense of if where you're standing is safe or not safe. There are too many unique situations to be able to definitively say what good positioning or bad positioning looks like 100% of the time, but here are some general pointers to get you started. Most of the time, you should be standing somewhere behind your team, as it's hard to heal them if they're not in your line of sight, and you're probably going to just get focused by the enemy team if you're up in front. At the same time, you don't want to stand so far behind them that you are isolated, as a diver could easily come for you and no one on your team would be close enough to protect you from the diver, otherwise known as peeling. Try to stand far away in a spot where you have line of sight on your team and the enemy team does not have line of sight on you. This is easier on some maps than others, but just know that if you are in the enemy line of sight and not protected by cover, high ground, or teammate, you're probably going to die. I honestly believe that just by improving your positioning, you should be able to minimize most of your unnecessary deaths. Additionally, cooldown management, which we went over previously, will help you stay alive in many more teamfights. I would also highly suggest using the voice chat, or if you're unable to do that, use the in-game ping system. It sometimes has mixed results, but your team can't help you if they don't know you're in trouble, and by screaming in the voice chat that someone's on top of you, they can be much more proactive about peeling for you. Just remember that you shouldn't say, "I need help," because it gives them no information about who you're playing or where you are. Even something simple like, "Luna needs help in the back line," is enough to give people the info they need to find you. As a strategist, the only stat that really matters is the amount of deaths you have. Your heals, kills, assists, damage, none of that really matters because if you're dead and walking back from spawn all game, you're providing no value to the team. Remember, this does not mean that you should just play scared all game so you never die. Being a good strategist player means knowing how to play just dangerous enough that you're providing maximum value without playing so risky that you die for it. Once you master walking that line, you should be able to climb out of platinum. And once you get into diamond, you're going to start meeting opponents that are building good team comps, using their abilities wisely, and not dying unnecessarily. Now, it is time to truly test your skills as a strategist player, and you must learn to avoid making the most critical mistake of all, poor target prioritization. Target prioritization is the act of deciding who to dedicate your limited resources to at any given moment. This includes your healing, but is also all the other aspects of your kit like your buffs, crowd control, or other utility. Fights can be won or lost based on who the strategist chooses to focus on, and sometimes if your team is saying GG no heals, well, it's probably because they were playing out of line of sight all game and running in and dying, let's be honest, but there's a genuine chance that they weren't getting the heals they needed all game because of poor prioritization from the strategists. Prioritization is an instinct you build over time. As much as I try to explain it right now, the single best way to get better at prioritization is to play more games. Not only play more games, but go back and watch your replays, especially ones where your team is claiming they got no heals. Reflect on your gameplay and analyze the gameplay of your teammates. Sure, oftentimes teammates can get themselves into situations where it seems like no amount of healing could ever be enough for them, but if you go into every game thinking that all your teammates' deaths are always their problem and never look inwards at your own gameplay, I promise that you are just holding yourself back from becoming a better player. Like everything else about this role, there are no hard and fast rules about who you should be prioritizing at any given moment, but here's a general rule of thumb priority list that I usually run through in my head during games. Number 1, are your other supports in danger? Because if they die, your job just gets harder, so it's best to make sure that they stay alive above anyone else on the team. Number 2, is anyone about to die? Whether a teammate's on 1 HP or they're just taking heavy fire, if someone's about to be picked off, that's the time to start giving them some more focus. Number 3, do my divers need topping up? These DPS either get heals from you or need to run all the way to a health pack since there's no passive regen for most of the characters in this game. If there's no other pressing targets, be sure to keep them topped up so they can get back into the fight. Number 4, are there enemies overextending or about to die? Taking a break from just healing, if no one on your team is at immediate threat of dying, try and take the opportunity to put damage into the other team. It's a lot faster to deal damage than to heal damage, so by putting in just a bit more yourself, you're putting pressure on the enemy strategist, which could make the difference. Number 5, tanks in the front line. If your tanks are creating space in the front line but are not actively dying, there's no need to heal them at that exact second. Obviously, you should top them up if you have a free moment, but remember that tanks have huge health bars for a reason. They aren't suddenly going to perish just because they lost a tiny bit of HP. Number 6, last but not least, is your backline DPS. They generally should be standing in off angles or angles protected by the tank, so the main threat they will face is divers or their own bad positioning. If they are taking a ton of damage, they obviously get higher priority because they get upgraded to is anyone about to die tier, but generally you shouldn't keep your focus on these players. And remember, there are always exceptions to these rules given the unique scenario of the game you're in. Don't try and always follow some order of operations because it won't be perfectly applicable in every scenario. Instead, try and actively think about the targets you are devoting your resources to and if they are the most effective target at that given moment. By knowing about these 5 critical mistakes, you should be able to start unlocking the true potential of the strategist role and see yourself start to improve. But remember, you won't suddenly improve overnight. It still takes a lot of time and effort to integrate these skills into your way of thinking until it becomes like second nature. I've been a support main for years across several games, and I still feel like I'm learning new things about how to play the role each and every day. Strategist can be a tough role to stick with, but trust me, once you master it, it's one of the most fun and engaging roles out there. Hopefully you feel like you learned something. If you're interested in more high quality strategist content, I would highly encourage you to subscribe. I want to build a community of strategists and strategist curious players that can support and learn from each other, and if that's something that interests you, feel free to join my Discord, linked in the description below. If you think I missed anything or have any questions, please leave them in the comments. See you in the next episode, where we'll be discussing the role of the strategist in much deeper detail.